Hi guys, how are you doing today? I hope you're all doing very well. I am wearing this vintage Victoria's Secret slip gown. I wasn't going to wear this, but I don't know. It's got like this little baby doll aesthetic going on with the little bows. So I have a small, teeny tiny following over on Instagram. And often brands will reach out to me and ask to collab and send me gifted clothes or products to promote on my platform. And the other day, I got a DM from a brand called Little for Big. I had not heard of this brand before, and from the message, I couldn't really tell if they were legit or what kind of clothes they had. So I clicked on the profile. My jaw, after like 2 seconds of looking, my jaw literally dropped to the floor. I was flabbergasted trying to figure out why a brand like this would ever reach out to me. I have never expressed any interest in these kinds of things. I thought maybe because they saw like my background in some of my posts and that it was like, girly and with stuffed animals, that maybe they thought, oh yeah, she'll definitely model one of our onesies that say on them, I guess. Needless to say, I did not accept this deal. But it got me thinking about this one Melanie Martinez video essay I had watched recently. I mentioned this video in my last video and I asked if any of you would like to see a Melanie Martinez deep dive, and I was happy to see so many of you say that you were interested. And thank goodness, because honestly, I really need a break from talking about all these crazy ass TikTokers, okay? So, today we will be exploring the very disturbing story of Crybaby, the fictional child character and persona Melanie Martinez created and built a brand and a career off of. I initially planned for this video to just be like a complete Melanie deep dive, including all of her albums, her products, and all of the allegations against her. But when I had finally finished writing the script for Crybaby, it was so long. It was. I can usually tell based on how many pages my script is, how long the video will be. So if it's around or a little over 40 pages, I know it'll be at least a 2-hour video, if not more. And my Crybaby script is 32 pages. So unless I make a 6-hour video, there's absolutely no way I'm going to get through the entire Melanie Martinez universe in one video. So this is going to be part 1 of a multi-part series exploring the dark world of Melanie Martinez. Part 1 will focus on the Crybaby era, a whole album analysis, as well as the highly controversial Crybaby coloring book. And in part 2, we'll be doing the same thing, except we will be exploring Melanie's second studio album and film, K-12. And depending on how these two videos do view-wise will determine if I then follow up with a Portals analysis and a video exploring the allegations against Melanie. But for now, I can guarantee parts 1 and 2, regardless if the videos get a decent amount of views or not. So content warnings before we jump in. This story, while fictional, involves heavy themes of abuse, SA, crimes against people under the age of 18, murder, substance use, and we will be going in depth about all of these things as we explore this story through a more critical lens. And FYI, for my protection, okay, I have to state that these are all my own opinions based on my research and my own experiences. I do not know Melanie, I've never spoken with her, so any of the opinions I express about what I think of Melanie are just that, my opinions. So don't take this as fact, and Melanie, please don't sue me. Oh, and also, to Melanie fans, please don't dox and stalk and harass me. That would be very helpful. All right, preamble over, let's get started. So who exactly is Melanie Martinez and where did she come from? Melanie Adele Martinez was born on April 28th, 1995, making her 30 years old. She was born in Queens, New York, and was raised in Baldwin, New York. Melanie moved to Baldwin, New York at age 4 with her parents Mary and Jose Martinez. Melanie has said that her interest in music began in elementary school, where one of her teachers taught her how to sing. She also took an interest in writing poetry in kindergarten, saying she would write poetry about things she likes, such as lemonade, and she also wrote a poem about a teacher she didn't like.
And when and how did you start to think about this as something to give your life to? When did it start to come into focus that music was going to be the thing?
Well, I always loved singing since I was really small, and I wrote a bunch of poetry growing up. And then when I was 14, I taught myself how to play guitar just so I could write songs because I really wanted to. So I kind of just turned the poems into like little songs and started writing that way. And yeah, so I guess like when I was maybe like 14, 15 is when I really like was getting really into it and started thinking about it as an actual like career rather than just like a hobby.
Tell me the moving from writing poems, from writing words to thinking of that as songs, as music. I mean, was there a progression in that, shifting that into a different kind of focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was younger, I just wrote poems, like really silly poems about really just anything that I could think of. Like I loved, and I still love, like lemonade. So I wrote like a poem about lemonade and how much I love it. And like that was when I was like really little. Though.
Read that poem.
And if I like didn't like a teacher, I would like write. I wrote like a poem once about like me like being upset at my teacher and hoping that she steps on gum or something funny like that. I don't really. That was yeah. But yeah, it's definitely different writing songs, and I mean, but it's similar in a lot of ways. I love focusing on the lyrical content and making sure that the music is telling a story from beginning to end.
And from there, Melanie honed in on her craft. She taught herself how to play guitar at age 14 and also took an interest in painting and photography. Melanie is really the definition of an artist. She's not only very musically inclined, but has a keen eye for unique visuals, which is very much reflected in her work, especially her K-12 film, which we will be exploring in part 2. Before we begin to talk about Melanie's career and her rise to fame, I want to give a little bit more of a background on her as a person and her life. And this is important context for when we dissect some of her music and the themes that inspired it. So I watched many interviews with Melanie as part of the preparation for this video, and Melanie herself has expressed that she had a great childhood and that her parents have always been very supportive of her, both as a person and through her creative endeavors.
The next track is Dollhouse, and Dollhouse is her family life, just, how she grew up. And Sippy Cup is the third one, and that's a deeper look into kind of her family life and like really just like how they deal with things. Like my family life's so different than hers. So I had a really great childhood and like my family's super supportive and always has been. So very different. And in Crybaby story, her mom is an alcoholic and her father is cheating on her mom with someone else. So
now, just because someone says they had a great childhood doesn't necessarily mean they haven't had periodical ups and downs and hardships here and there. But as far as her family dynamic, it seems that she didn't come from a broken family or face many of the issues and themes within her music. She did say in one interview that she grew up in a very traditional Latin household, and from an early age, she knew she was bisexual and was worried that she would not be embraced or accepted by her family. However, as it turns out, her family is actually fully accepting of Melanie's sexuality. And like I said, this is important context because, especially in Melanie's first studio album, Crybaby, the story centers around a character she named Crybaby who experiences many dark things within her life. And this character is supposed to be Melanie. Like, don't get me wrong, Crybaby is separate from Melanie, but at the same time, she's not. Melanie plays the character of Crybaby in all of her videos, and she has said herself that she can't separate herself from the character. And I just think it's important that we establish this now, because as you'll see later on, it raises a lot of questions about some of the things that Melanie puts this character, Crybaby, through, which again is sort of an alternate persona or version of Melanie, who is a literal baby, by the way. Just gonna put that out there now. Anyways, Melanie had first gained recognition as an artist when she auditioned for the third season of The Voice in 2012. And actually, according to Melanie, she had not watched the show prior and almost did not make it to the audition because while they were on the way, Melanie's mother's car broke down. So they had to hitch a ride in a taxi and made it just in time. Several months passed after her initial audition, and she received multiple callbacks before finally being told that she was selected to audition on the show itself. Melanie auditioned live on The Voice, performing an acoustic version of Toxic by Britney Spears. And 3 out of 4 judges, including Adam Levine, CeeLo Green, and Blake Shelton, hit their I Want You button, making Melanie an official contestant on the show at 16 years old. Adam Levine actually recognized her talents immediately, noting how she had a very unique voice, and Melanie chose Adam to be her voice coach. And I went through every single performance Melanie did while on The Voice, and immediately, I could see the draw to her. Not only does Melanie have a very unique and distinct voice, but she's quite confident in herself, but also not cocky. You can tell she takes pride in her abilities, but does not see herself as better or more talented than anyone, and is very receptive to criticism. There was one scene I watched between her and Adam where he's coaching her, and he's not being rude by any means, but he definitely is giving her constructive feedback and telling her she can do better, and she takes it in stride, which is pretty remarkable, to be honest. I realize it's television, but being a 16-year-old child being criticized by someone of Adam Levine's caliber, that has to be pretty challenging. I very much can see the appeal to Melanie and how she became so successful so quickly. I wish I could play some of these performances for you guys, but sadly I know I would be copyrighted. But I especially enjoyed her covers of Cough Syrup and Seven Nation Army. Melanie was eliminated in week 5 of The Voice, but this opportunity kickstarted her career. Melanie spent most of 2013 writing music, and on February 9th, 2014, she released her single Dollhouse, which would be followed by the release of her EP under the same name, which she released just a month after she was signed to Atlantic Records. The Dollhouse EP contained 4 songs, 2 of which would later be added to Melanie's first studio album, Crybaby. The single Carousel on the Dollhouse EP is famously known for being used in a trailer of the 4th season of American Horror Story Freak Show. And following the EP, Melanie would launch the Dollhouse Tour, which lasted from June 2014 to March 2015. And that brings us to the release of Melanie's first studio album and arguably her most popular album, Crybaby, which released on August 14th, 2015, and was followed by a tour of the same name beginning on August 26th, about a week later. Crybaby was definitely Melanie's breakthrough. Don't get me wrong, she was very successful prior to Crybaby with her appearance on The Voice and her Dollhouse EP, but Crybaby is what catapulted Melanie into the mainstream. Crybaby also played a very significant role in Melanie Martinez's branding. Even now, though she's definitely entered a new era following her 2023 album Portals, many people still associate Melanie with the Crybaby image, aka her very doll-like appearance with split-dyed hair and bangs and bows and baby doll dresses and pastel colors and vintage themes. Though, if you're like me and you weren't familiar with Melanie Martinez, you may have associated the term Crybaby with the Lil Peep song. While Crybaby may have been Melanie's most successful album and strongly associated with her mainstream image, if you've been paying attention to the Melanie universe for the last few years, you may have noticed a bit of a tone shift towards the Crybaby era. 10 years ago, this album and its themes and image were viewed as unparalleled. Nobody was really doing what Melanie was, or at least if they weren't nearly as successful. But nowadays, while still praised by fans, Crybaby faces quite a bit of controversy, and for many reasons. So today, we're going to explore the Melanie Martinez's Crybaby album and closely examine her music to determine why the tone has shifted so heavily against the Crybaby era and whether or not this criticism is justified. Was Melanie doing something unique and different, juxtaposing between the innocence of childhood with incredibly dark themes? Or is there something much more nefarious behind all of this? So let's take a deeper look at Crybaby. So Crybaby is a concept album which is defined as a collection of songs that are unified by a central theme or narrative, creating a cohesive artistic statement rather than just a random assortment of tracks. Crybaby follows the story of Crybaby, who is the main character and the embodiment of Melanie's emotional struggles. Like I stated earlier, Crybaby is Melanie. Crybaby is her character, who is an actual baby. The story follows Crybaby as she navigates things like love and pain and endures extreme amounts of trauma that ultimately send her into a state of madness. In one Vice interview, Melanie states, "I am Crybaby. It's very hard to separate myself from the character. It's still something that I am trying to figure out. I knew that I wanted the album to be called Crybaby for the longest time, and my main reason for it was because I was teased as a kid for being super emotional, and I took things way too seriously." So, before Melanie fans come to behead me when I express my opinions of Melanie and this Crybaby era, Crybaby is not some separate entity from Melanie. Melanie, in her own words, says, "I am Crybaby. It's hard for me to separate myself from the character." And I will explain later on why that is so important, because Melanie isn't just creating a story. She's creating a story that she can then live vicariously through as her character Crybaby and experience all of the horrific things that Crybaby endures. So we begin with track 1, Crybaby. This song is described as the beginning of Crybaby's story, a child who experiences adult things. However, there are some things in Crybaby's story that Melanie did not experience herself, according to her. The name Crybaby was chosen because it was a name Melanie was called a lot growing up due to her sensitivity. She says she was often teased as a kid for being too emotional, and Crybaby was an insult often hurled towards her. The story begins with Crybaby's mother giving birth. She's in a hospital room surrounded by nurses who are rabbits, which, by the way, Alice in Wonderland was a huge inspiration according to Melanie. Her mom gives birth and the baby won't stop crying, so her brother writes Crybaby on her birth certificate, giving her that official name. We then cut to Crybaby's room where Melanie sits up out of an adult-sized crib. We then get a glimpse into Crybaby's home life. We see multiple scenes of Melanie as Crybaby playing with adult-sized baby toys, sitting in an adult-sized high chair, and being fed by her mother, an alcoholic who seems to resent her daughter. And Crybaby begins to cry. She gets covered in her own tears and eventually cries so much that it fills the entire room, and she's swimming in a pool of her tears. And some notable lyrics. "They call me Crybaby, Crybaby, but I don't care. Crybaby, Crybaby, I laugh through my tears. Crybaby, Crybaby, 'cause I don't care. Tears fall to the ground, I just let them drown." Then we have our next track, Dollhouse, which I stated previously was initially a single that was then released again under the Dollhouse EP and then added to the Crybaby album. In Dollhouse, we learn more about Crybaby's family dynamic. Dollhouse tells the story of a seemingly picture-perfect family that holds many dark secrets beneath the surface, or, in Melanie's words, through the curtains. Not only is Crybaby's mother an alcoholic, but her brother is a cannabis smoker. Oh boy. And her father is often absent and out cheating on Crybaby's mother. And in this song, one of the lyrics alludes to something in the kitchen, which will be revealed in the next track. And some notable lyrics for this one: "Places, places, get in your places. Throw on your dress and put on your doll faces. Everyone thinks that we're perfect. Please don't let them look through the curtains. DOLLHOUSE. I see things that nobody else sees." This entire video is like a try not to sing challenge. I'm not going to go too deep into my personal opinions and theories just yet until we've gone through the Crybaby album in full. But again, keep in mind, These experiences are not Melanie's experiences. These are Crybaby's experiences that Melanie endures as her character Crybaby. Melanie, in her own words, has not experienced living in a broken home with an alcoholic parent and a cheating father and a cannabis smoking brother. So now we're at the third track, Sippy Cup. In this video, we find out that Crybaby's mother has murdered Crybaby's father and his mistress in an alcohol and jealousy-fueled rage when her father comes home in the middle of the night with his mistress. Crybaby wakes up in the middle of the night and goes downstairs into the kitchen to discover the grisly scene. The mother then sneaks up on Crybaby, drugs her with chloroform, and ties Crybaby to her bed. Her mother then drugs her again, this time with a sippy cup she's forcing Crybaby to drink from. And in a Spin magazine interview, Melanie describes the song and video for Sippy Cup, saying, "The song is basically the bridge between the Dollhouse EP and the Crybaby album. This song is about what actually goes down in the kitchen. A deeper look into Crybaby's family life. This is my favorite video I've done so far." And some notable lyrics: "Blood still stains when the sheets are washed. Don't sleep when the lights are off. Kids are still depressed when you dress them up. And syrup is still syrup in a sippy cup. He's still dead when you're done with the bottle. Of course it's a corpse that you keep in the cradle. Kids are still depressed when you dress them up. Syrup is still syrup in a sippy cup." And something I want to take note of before we move on, this is the first of many instances of Crybaby either being drugged or taking drugs. And this is something that Melanie really seems to enjoy, is her character Crybaby being drugged, whether it's being chloroformed, forced to drink poison, being injected with drugs, eating food unsuspectingly that is drugged, or eventually even willingly taking drugs. And between Crybaby and K-12, there are countless instances of Melanie as Crybaby being drugged or poisoned in some way, which I have some opinions about that I won't get into until after we go through the album in its entirety. But I think I'm going to do a tally count for every instance of Crybaby being between both Crybaby and K-12, just to demonstrate how much Melanie does this. It's actually crazy. And FYI, I'm counting this video as twice because chloroform and sippy cup. So then that brings us to track 4, Carousel, which was originally a single also released under the Dollhouse EP, and as I stated earlier, was featured in a trailer of the 4th season of American Horror Story. Carousel is actually interesting. So it takes place in a carnival setting, and we get introduced to a boy who is the first love interest of Crybaby. She goes on rides with him, she follows him around. There are even some scenes where she is floating and following him, and at the end of the video, she is tied to a horse on a carousel, and she throws up after riding the ride and spinning so many times. The story is essentially about a relationship that goes in circles, like a carousel, but never progresses or moves forward, and instead leaves Crybaby chasing after a boy that she'll ultimately never reach. In a Billboard magazine interview, Melanie states, "Carousel is about my feeling in love with someone and being stuck on the same ride and trying to grab them, but I just never reach them." And reminder, okay, this is a baby. Crybaby is a baby. I mean, at this point, she may be a toddler since she's riding carousel rides. You can't really do that as a baby, at least by yourself, but nonetheless is still a very, very, very young girl, young child, who is going in circles in a relationship with a boy she'll never reach. Because, that definitely happens all the time with children. Some notable lyrics: "Round and round like a horse on a carousel we go. Will I catch up to love? I can never tell. I know chasing after you is like a fairy tale, but I feel like I'm glued on tight to this carousel." So now we're at Alphabet Boy, and this one was a bit confusing to me, to be honest. In Melanie's words, this song is Crybaby's breakup with the boy from Carousel. Melanie stated in a Vice interview, "I wanted to title it Alphabet Boy because he was in college for music and used to try and teach me how to write songs as if there was a formula or I wasn't writing songs correctly. It made me furious, and I just wanted to elaborate on that. Me and Jeremy used lots of alliteration in that song for all of the verses. We wanted to go in order of the alphabet." So in other words, this is a song about a college-aged guy who mansplains writing music to Melanie. In the music video, she is once again playing Crybaby, and the opening scene is Crybaby wearing a pacifier that is removed from her mouth. The song then starts, ah, 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 ba, 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 ba. That was very weird for me to say. You know, it's supposed to sound the way young children or babies sound when they're sounding out the alphabet or sounding out words. Like in the Crybaby music video, she's rolling around on the floor, playing with baby blocks, eating cereal in a high chair, talking about not being a little kid anymore, which Crybaby is a little kid and remains a little kid even through K-12. There's quite a few children's references and themes. There's one line where Melanie sings, "You're not my daddy and I'm not your dolly," which made me feel a little icky, to be honest. Again, this is a toddler. This character is a toddler who experiences adult things, aka trauma. A character who is being played by Melanie, a grown adult who is wearing pacifiers and playing with baby blocks, singing, "You're not my daddy, I'm not your dolly." If this is starting to feel a little weird, that's because it is. And some notable lyrics for this one. "I know my ABCs, yet you keep teaching me. I say your degree, alphabet boy. You think you're smarter than me with all your bad poetry. All your ABCs, alphabet boy. I'm not a little kid now. Watch me get big now. Spell my name on a fridge now with all your alphabet toys. You won the spelling bee now, but are you smarter than me now? You're the prince of the playground, little alphabet boy." So then we get to Soap, the sixth track in the album. This song once again follows Melanie as Crybaby, who grapples with feelings of vulnerability when she feels attracted to someone, saying that she wants to wash her mouth out with soap because she's afraid to reveal her true feelings. In an interview with Elle magazine, Melanie states, "Everyone is allowed to be vulnerable. I think women and men and dogs and cats and ants and aliens can all express themselves and be vulnerable. Soap was written about my current boyfriend when we first started talking. I felt too scared to say how I felt about him and thought if I told him it'd be like throwing a toaster in the bath. So I washed my mouth out with soap. I think anyone can really relate to this song. I'm sure there was a time in everyone's life where they felt too scared to say how they felt, so they washed their mouth out with soap." In the beginning of the music video, Melanie is in a bathtub and she calls Johnny, the love interest, and asks him to come over. So he comes over, and as he's entering the bathroom, we then cut to Melanie singing in a bib, topless. The guy strips down and gets in the bathtub. As he's sitting in the tub, he's watching Melanie sing on a TV, and then a toaster falls into the water, and somehow he doesn't die. Then we see Melanie holding her throat as soap bubbles come out, and then at the end, Melanie appears in the bathtub and she kisses Johnny, and that's how the video ends. It's important to note that this song was initially released as a single, and the original music video is different from the music video that I'm describing. This music video is a double feature music video with the next track, Training Wheels. However, in the original Soap music video, there is no boy, and instead just Melanie in a bathtub singing along with the scenes of her in the bib as well. And I think I prefer the original music video mainly because it doesn't depict adults acting as children making out in a bathtub. And by the way, before we move on, jumping ahead a little bit here, but in the Crybaby coloring book that was released, which a lot of you are probably already aware of, and we will be going over extensively later on, the coloring page for Soap is actually the page that was the most controversial, which is the one with Crybaby in the bathtub. It went very viral, and many people have argued that the page counts as CSAM. I won't get too deep into the coloring book just yet, but just taking note of that now so that you all have a little bit of an understanding of the actual context of the image. And some notable lyrics from Soap. "Think I got myself in trouble, so I'll fill the bath with bubbles. Then I'll put the towels all away. Should have never said the word love, threw a toaster in the bathtub. I'm sick of all the games I have to play." So now that brings us to track 7, Training Wheels. And again, this is a double feature music video with Soap, and this, according to Melanie, is the first love song she's ever written. In an interview with Pop Dust, Melanie stated, "This about the song. I'm not used to writing happy songs like that. I wanted to challenge myself in that way too. It's about being okay with being in love. It means he's riding a bike with training wheels, and I want to take them off and go to the next step. I want to ride a two-wheeler with you. That's the whole point of the song. Okay, so let's just make something abundantly clear right now. This is not just a love song. This is a love song about two children who go all the way. Or in Melanie's words, go to the next step. AKA having sex. And no, that's not allegedly or my opinion or my personal interpretation. This is quite literally about Crybaby and her crush Johnny having sex. Not only is it obvious based on the music video and the lyrics, but even in Melanie Martinez's wiki fandom page about the song Training Wheels, it states, quote, Training Wheels is a love song that details Crybaby in a relationship with her crush, Johnny, and her desire to move on to the next stage, which includes true commitment as well as intimacy. Training Wheels is a metaphor for her wanting to get serious and leave behind the boundaries that kept the relationship non-sexual, insisting that she can help relinquish his fear of commitment and vulnerability. He can call her out on her flaws, yet it proves he's invested in a way that implies they're ready to move things further. So again, I don't want little Melanie fans in my comment section telling me that I'm just interpreting this as and that I'm the one being predatory by assuming it's well. No, it's quite literally about. Training Wheels is a metaphor for removing the boundaries that keep the relationship non-sexual. That is literally from Melanie's own fandom page, okay? So don't shoot the messenger because Mel fans are the ones that said it. I'm just relaying the message. And yes, I obviously have some thoughts and opinions on this that I will speak about more once we go through the album analysis in its entirety, but I'm sure most of you already know my feelings on that. In the music video, Crybaby is laying on the ground with her crush Johnny. She wakes up and then it cuts to Crybaby walking with a bike. Then we see Crybaby teaching Johnny how to ride the bike. Then Crybaby starts getting undressed and playing with the boy, and at the end of the video, the boy disappears. Some notable lyrics. I love everything you do. When you call me dumb for the stupid I do. Wanna ride my bike with you. Fully undressed, no training wheels left for you, and I'll pull them off for you. So tell me again, this is not a song about two kids having sex. Please, I dare you. So now we're at Pity Party, the 8th track in the album. This song and video is where we first begin to see Crybaby start to lose her sanity. And if you recall earlier, I stated how the whole album concept is about Crybaby as she's endures so much trauma that it literally drives her insane. So this is the first that we see of that. The song is about Crybaby having a birthday party who she invites all her friends and her crush to. When none of them show up, she breaks down and destroys everything. All the decorations, the cake, she cuts the heads off her toys, all of it. In an interview with Digital Journal, Melanie had this to say about the song. She fell in love with someone, she threw a birthday party, invited him, and nobody showed up, so she's just like absolutely insane. And like I stated earlier, in the music video, she's writing party invitations, no one shows up for the party, she breaks down, destroys decorations, chews balloons, smashes the cake, and at the very end of the video, Crybaby smokes a cigarette as she sits amongst all the destruction she caused. And some notable lyrics for this one. Did my invitations disappear? Why'd I put my heart on every cursive letter? Tell me why the hell no one is here. Tell me what to do to make it all feel better. Maybe it's a cruel joke on me. Whatever. Just means there's more cake for me forever. Oh, Jesus. Are you fucking kidding me? I feel stupid. Whatever. Okay, I just realized my ring light was like pointing this way and not at me, so I feel really stupid. So I might look a little brighter right now than I did earlier. That's so fucking annoying. Okay, track 9, Tag You're It. Oh boy. This is a song about our main character, Crybaby, being hunted, kidnapped, and assaulted by a man in a wolf mask in an ice cream truck, aka the big bad wolf. And the game tag is used as a metaphor for kidnapping. And again, nope, that's not just my interpretation, which I'll show in a second. Melanie said this about Tag Your It in a noisy interview. Crybaby is now single and wolves are on the prowl. She gets kidnapped by a wolf. In the beginning of a music video, we see Crybaby throwing away the destroyed party decorations from Pity Party. She begins walking down the street singing about being hunted and kidnapped. At times, we see her dancing in a convenience store as well. And at one point, she's singing Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, the nursery rhyme that most of us sang as a kid. She eventually accepts an ice cream cone from the big bad wolf, and as she eats it, she is drugged and then faints, and the wolf snatches her and puts her body in the ice cream truck and drives off. And by the way, side note, in this music video, this is the first appearance we see of Alita, who is Melanie's friend in real life, but also Crybaby's best friend, who plays a significant role in Melanie's second studio album and film, K-12. And there's a lot to unpack with this particular friend, which we'll discuss more when that becomes relevant. But Alita gives her a bottle of poison that will be utilized in the next song. And also the Crybaby coloring book page for this track is also another extremely controversial one. Again, we'll discuss that more later on. And some notable lyrics here, and I'm going to read a bit more of them than in other tracks because I think it's important. Looking at me through your window, boy, you had your eye out for a little. I'll cut you up and make you dinner. You've reached the end, you are the winner. Rolling down your tinted window. Driving next to me real slow, he said, let me take you for a joyride. I've got some candy for you inside. Running through the parking lot, he chased me and he wouldn't stop. Tag your it, tag your it. Grabbed my hand, pushed me down, took the words right out my mouth. Tag your it, tag your it. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch your lady by her toes. If she screams, don't let her go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, your mother said to pick the very best girl. And I am. Track 10, Milk and Cookies. This is a continuation of Tag Your It, and I'm just going to read a quote from the Genius lyrics page, an article describing the song. Milk and Cookies follows the fantasy story of the Crybaby character being assaulted. Write that down, Melanie fans. Write that down. Being assaulted in Tag Your It. In an interview with Vice, Melanie said that she offers the wolf poisonous milk and cookies, which helps her escape her captor. In this music video, we see Crybaby awake from inside of a toy box. She's in a locked room, and we can see the big bad wolf is watching her from a screen outside of the room. Crybaby is singing to the tune of the Freddy Krueger song, which I'm guessing that's not like the original tune, but that's just what I immediately think of when I hear the 1, 2, melatonin's coming for you, because I'm a pretty big horror fan. We also cut to some scenes of Melanie singing with her head in a glass vase, which I actually thought was pretty cool. In the video, Crybaby is forced to bake cookies for the big bad wolf, and when she does, she secretly puts poison in the cookies, the poison that was given to her by Alita in Tag Your It. The wolf eats the cookies and passes out, and Crybaby escapes. And some notable lyrics. Ashes, ashes, time to go down. Ooh, honey, do you want me now? Can't take it anymore, need to put you to bed. Sing you a lullaby where you die at the end. Look, I know I've said many times already that I'm gonna hold my opinions until after we finish the album, but like, what I will say right now, a lot of Melanie fans argue, well, actually, Melanie technically never says that Crybaby gets a in the story, so you can't say that's what happened, really. So a man stalks and hunts a little girl, who according to Melanie is single and on the prowl. The child drugs her, keeps her in a locked room, but no, there's definitely no implied assault. Nope. Even though the Genius page literally describes it as such, and Melanie has never refuted this. No. Crybaby definitely was not SA'd. The wolf really only kidnapped her so she could bake him cookies. Yeah. because that definitely makes a whole lot of fucking sense, obviously. Never mind the fact that heavy sexual themes are rampant throughout the whole album. Right, but like, yeah, this is the one exception. Sure. Yeah, okay. Whatever helps you sleep at night. We got 3 more to go, guys. So, now we're at track 11, Pacify Her. And this is yet another really controversial music video and song. I'm going to read the Genius Lyrics article page again for the song, which states, Pacify Her follows Tag Your It, which covers the topic of sexual assaults. Read that again. Melanie told Vice that Crybaby becomes a different person after that experience and embraces her craziness, which carries on through this song. Pacify Her is basically Crybaby being a homewrecker. She's so numb to love and doesn't think that it exists. She just stops caring at that point. The music video takes place in a nursery setting, and we see Crybaby singing and playing with toys, and a boy and another girl come into the nursery and start playing with each other. It's obvious that there is some tension and jealousy between the two girls over the boy, and Crybaby makes attempts to lure the boy away from the other girl. On the other hand, we have cut scenes in between of Melanie singing and dancing in a nursery setting in a bra and underwear, because it wouldn't be a true Melanie Martinez music video if there's no half-naked dancing alongside children's themes. We see Crybaby breaking toys out of anger. At one point, we see her actually take her head off. Again, kind of demonstrating Crybaby's plummet into madness and insanity. The boy is amused by this and starts to show Melanie more attention, or show Crybaby more attention. In one scene, the other girl leans in for a kiss and a pacifier is placed in her mouth. And at the very end, before the boy can reach Crybaby, the other girl stands between them and flashes her breast to the boy. The boy is then lured away by the other girl. I think it's pretty obvious why this one is controversial. And some notable lyrics. Tired blue boy walks my way, holding a girl's hand. That basic leaves finally. Now I can take your man. Someone told me stay away from things that aren't yours. But was he yours if he wanted me so bad? Pacify her. She's getting on my nerves. You don't love her. Stop lying with those words. Track number 12, Mrs. Potato Head. I actually really enjoyed the message behind this particular song. This song is about the concept of plastic surgery and the regret that comes with permanently altering yourself to be someone you're not to appease others, particularly men. And Melanie has actually stated that this is her favorite song from the Crybaby album. She explains the messaging of this song in a Vice interview, stating, Crybaby's becoming more confident and comfortable in her own skin, so she's forming opinions. I had the idea for Mrs. Potato Head for a long time, and the whole visual I had in my head was the fact that you can pull toy pieces off the face, and that could represent plastic surgery. It was not me bashing women who get plastic surgery, but more of, why are you doing this when you're so beautiful without it? The music video begins with Crybaby sitting in front of a TV, and she's watching an ad about diet pills. She starts comparing herself to the beautiful women on screen, and then we see her go to the bathroom, stuffing her bra with tissues and applying makeup on her face while crying, and she puts on a blonde wig and takes some pills. She then goes back to the TV and watches a woman get convinced by a man she likes to get plastic surgery. So the woman makes the appointment and she gets a job, a facelift, and lip injections. Then she comes home after surgery, after she's had all of these procedures, and we see the man cut off some of her hair while she sleeps. When she wakes up, she sees her hair, and the man convinces her to wear a blonde wig since blonde is considered the most ideal, I guess. We also see him make a face of disgust when he removes the bandages from her face to reveal the surgery results, where she looks very plastic and kind of botched, to be honest. The woman, after having all of this work done and wearing the blonde wig for this man, then peers out of the window to find him flirting with yet another brunette girl, and we can infer that he's using the same manipulation tactics on her as he did with the woman we're watching. The woman then touches her face in horror after realizing she completely changed herself for a man that ultimately discards her for a new, shinier toy. And as Crybaby watches this behind the screen, she interprets the story as a cautionary tale and removes the blonde wig and the tissues from her bra. And some notable lyrics: kids forever, baby soft skin turns into leather. Don't be dramatic, it's only some plastic. No one will love you if you're unattractive. If you want a little more confidence, potatoes turn to french fries. Yeah, it's common sense. All you need's a couple more condiments. After $100,000 for some compliments. It's such a waste when little girls grow into their mother's face. But little girls are learning how to cut and paste and pucker up their lips until they suffocate. Okay, so we have finally reached the end of the album and the final track, Mad Hatter. This is where Crybaby's story concludes for now. After all of the trauma and pain Crybaby endures throughout the story, at the end she is driven insane, and she learns to accept and embrace the insanity rather than fight it. In an interview with Artistic Direct, Melanie had this to say about the song: Mad Hatter is about being okay with being crazy. Crybaby wouldn't have it any other way. That is who she is and cannot fight it. That's how I am at this point. The music video has very strong Alice in Wonderland vibes, obviously with the title being Mad Hatter, and there are many lyrical references to Alice within the song, including one line saying, "getting drunk with a blue caterpillar." In the beginning, we see Crybaby smoking a cigarette in her bedroom, and I think there's some subtle messaging here about toxic family cycles, as we can see Crybaby following in the steps of her mother with the smoking and the drinking. She drinks from a bottle on her nightstand, which I'm guessing is either some kind of drug or alcohol, and from there she begins hallucinating. We then see Melanie come out of a Jack-in-the-Box. We see her doing things like peeling the skin off of her face. People begin melting around her. She's dancing with her hallucinations, and she floats to a doctor's office, which I think is implied to be a psychiatrist. As Crybaby is seeing the doctor, the hallucinations break into the office, and it's clear these hallucinations are only visible to Crybaby. At the end, we see Crybaby fall into a dish filled with ice cream that is sitting on a table. The people gathered at the table, two of which closely resemble her parents, begin eating from the dish, and the hallucinations come up behind them and stab them all. At the end of the video, there are some talking treats that come along. One of them is a donut that Melanie grabs, and she begins eating alive. She then wakes back up in her bed, and that is the end. Some notable lyrics: I'm nuts, baby, I'm mad. The craziest friend you've ever had. You think I'm psycho, you think I'm gone. Tell the psychiatrist something is wrong. Over the bend, entirely bonkers. You like me best when I'm off my rocker. Tell you a secret, I'm not alarmed. So what if I'm crazy? The best people are. Okay, so now let's discuss some of my opinions about this album concept. First, I want to talk about some of the things I enjoyed and appreciated. Number one, I think for the most part, the story is pretty cohesive. I found a lot of the visuals very interesting. The pastels contrasted with some of the gore and the brutality I think is very cool. I really like the Alice in Wonderland and Tim Burton's themes very much, both of which Melanie has said greatly inspired her. I liked most of the costume designs, though obviously there are some issues there, which I'll discuss soon. I think I especially enjoyed Mrs. Potato Head and the message behind it because Melanie has a very young, predominantly female audience. I actually think the message that you don't need to alter yourself in order to appeal to men and society is a great message for young girls. And I know there are some people who get kind of upset when you criticize plastic surgery, and listen, if I'm being totally honest right now, I don't necessarily have an issue with plastic surgery. But I do have a little bit of an issue with how normalized it has become in our society, so much so that the idea of uniqueness has been abandoned completely. And now everyone wants the same, cookie cutter, copy and paste Instagram baddie face. I think it's been especially detrimental to young women. And look, you know, you guys can disagree with me on that, and that's fine. I realize that's not the most progressive message when it comes to this issue, but it's just my personal opinion. So now let's discuss the many criticisms I have of this story. Number one, and probably the most glaringly obvious one, the fact that the story centers around a baby who is neglected, drugged, kidnapped, SA'd, etc. The character did not have to be a baby. It really did not. It so did not. It truly did not. Just because the name was Crybaby, adults get called crybabies all the time. Crybaby did not have to be a literal baby just because the name had baby in it. It was so unnecessary to make the character an actual baby who goes through immense amounts of trauma. You could have had this exact same character development in these exact themes depicting adult characters. And actually, that would have made the story make so much more sense. Like, I think if she kept the song Crybaby and Dollhouse to explain Crybaby's origins, and then the rest of the album was Crybaby as an adult, it would have made so much more sense, and you could still have, you know, the elements of Carousel and Training Wheels and even Tag Your It without having the character be an actual baby. Like Carousel, for instance. Carousel is about a relationship that goes in circles. In what universe are two babies or two toddlers in a committed relationship that goes in circles? That they aren't. That does not happen. That makes literally no sense. Same with Training Wheels, same with Soap. There is no universe where two babies explore explicit adult activities, and if they do, something is wrong. Soap, a song about confessing love. Babies do not have the capacity to even fall in love. Now hold on. I'm not saying that babies don't experience love. Of course they do. But experiencing love for your friends and family is not the same as falling in love. Falling in love involves romance and lust, things that babies do not experience. And again, if they do, something is very wrong. Even Pacify Her. Again, in what universe is a baby a homewrecker? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Same with the girl flashing a boy. Again, a baby. These things do not happen unless something is wrong. Oftentimes, children engaging in these behaviors have been abused. And FYI, I just want to say, Melanie is very smart. She's not a fool. She's said this in multiple interviews, but all of these concepts, visually, artistically, come straight out of her brain. She directs pretty much all of her music videos. All of this, the story, the visuals, it's her artistic vision. So she is very much capable of thinking up these unique concepts and executing them. In other words, she really did not have to make the main character a baby. She could have kept most of these titles and themes and applied them to adults. She chose a baby, not because it worked better with the story. It actually doesn't work better with the story. She chose to make Crybaby a baby because she wanted her to be a baby. Even Alphabet Boy was so odd to me because the inspiration for that song was a college-aged guy mansplaining writing music to her. How does that possibly correlate at all with childhood? Which kind of leads me to my next opinion, which is that I think a lot of this was done not because it made the story better or more interesting, but because I personally believe Melanie is using Crybaby as a way to explore and live out a fantasy of ADD, LG, abuse, SA, being, etc. And I know Mel fans are gonna get very mad at me, but I'm sorry, it's true. It's true. Melanie has stated herself that these are not her experiences. She said that in multiple interviews, but yet she says she is Crybaby and she can't separate herself from the character, even though the character endures trauma that Melanie has not experienced. How does that make any sense? It's so odd to me. Like, when I watch her talk about Crybaby in interviews, right? And she'll discuss the themes of her songs. So, like Tag Your It, for instance. In an interview, she talked about the song and she says,
what I would do, like the writing process was really just listing like a bunch of titles that related to a childhood theme or whatever, and I would try to add an adult situation to give it the contrast between like the light and the dark. And so that was kind of the process every time with writing. And then and I was writing about personal experiences, and you know, some things are just made up stories that it's really fun for me, actually. It's like one of my favorite things to do is kind of just add a little bit of whimsy and fantasy into the music by, like, you know, making up stories like, you know, like in Crybaby's story, she gets kidnapped by the big bad wolf, and she escapes by poisoning him with milk and cookies, and you know, that didn't happen to me.
Didn't happen to
No.
There's not a documentary.
But it's just fun to, you know, really explore ideas like that and to kind of just really have fun. So
It didn't happen to me, but it's just kind of fun to explore ideas like that. Explore the idea of a child being hunted and tracked and essayed. And speaking more on Tag Your It specifically, something I noticed immediately about that music video and even the song lyrics themselves, Crybaby is presented as sort of cunning and sly, as if she knows she's being hunted. She's dancing around in this playful way while she's singing about being watched, stalked, hunted. And it gives the impression that she's teasing the wolf. It comes across like it's supposed to feel alluring. Meanwhile, it's a story about a child who is stalked, hunted, kidnapped, and essayed. So why is it being presented this way? In another interview where she talks about Dollhouse, she says a very similar thing, saying how Crybaby's family is nothing like her family, but that for her, it was about how everyone has their problems and you're never going to truly see them. Which, like, okay, sure, yeah, I can get down with that. I'm sure we've all felt that way at some point. But then in that case, why are you playing the role of Crybaby? This is what I'm not getting. Like, she'll talk about the dark meanings and themes behind these songs and the things Crybaby goes through, but then she'll be like, oh, but not me though. But also, I am Crybaby, and it's hard for me to separate myself from the character. The character that goes through these things I've never gone through, that I really want to go through vicariously through this character that I created, that is a baby. If it was really just about the story, why is she playing the main character? And why does she feel so attached to a character that she can't actually relate to in any way? Other than the character just being sensitive like Melanie, she doesn't relate to the character in the ways that are important, like the experiences that Crybaby goes through. So I'm going to chime in here and probably a couple more times throughout this video, which I tend to do a lot because I always have more that I want to say when I start going through the editing process of these videos and whatever. So with Tag Your It, I have a lot of complex feelings as someone who can relate to the song and its themes in a couple of different ways. And initially, when I filmed this, I didn't plan on interjecting with my own personal experiences, but I'm going to. I've decided that I'm going to because I think it will give a little bit more validity to my opinions and to my criticisms. So, like I've already stated a million times, right? Tag Your It explores themes of, you know, stalking and kidnapping and drinking and essaying, allegedly, but not really, to be honest, you know, etc. And FYI, I've never been kidnapped, okay? But there was one instance in my childhood where I believe I came very close to it. And I actually have forgotten a lot of my memories prior to me turning 18, to be honest. But some of these memories have actually resurfaced as a result of, you know, doing all this research into Melanie and going through all of these things, right? So most young girls probably know what it's like to be catcalled, right? So whether it's dudes like honking their horns at you when you're out walking or guys like hollering at you, I think every woman can relate to that in some way and have, you know, at least one story they could tell of being catcalled, if not multiple. I have multiple. I have so many. Mainly because during my tween and teen years, I would walk a lot. So my home life was, really chaotic, very chaotic in a lot of ways. So when I would get home from school, what I would do is I would eat dinner and then I would leave and I would walk across my town to my grandmother's house, and I would spend a few hours at my grandmother's house because, my grandparents are old people living alone and it's incredibly quiet and quaint at their house. So I would spend a few hours there and then I would walk back home at night. So there were many instances of guys not only catcalling me, but even following me in their cars and trying to get me to get in their cars. And when I say like follow me, I mean genuinely follow me, like following me down the street. Sometimes they would try to get me to get in their car, and then when I would say no, what they would do is they would circle the block and then come back around and keep trying to convince me to get in the car, right? So there were many instances of this, and there was even one thing that I remembered while I was researching of a guy that was driving one of those city buses, right? So I think different cities have like different ones. In the city that I am, it's called like Centro, like the Centro bus, and this guy, I kid you not, I kid you not, a whole Centro bus, a whole city bus, empty, pulls up next to me. Mind you, I'm not at a bus stop, I'm just walking home, and he tries to get me to get in his bus. And he's like, "Are you married?" I'm like, "No, I'm 12. And he was like, "Oh shit." He's like, "I'm sorry." And he like, listen, I mean, at least he apologized, right? Because some guys that only further entices them when you tell them that. At least for him, he was like, "Oh shit." He had a no shit moment. But even so, that was crazy. Wild. But anyways, so I've listened to the Crybaby album many times now and watched the videos as well because I like to have a really strong understanding of the source material I'm criticizing. In that one lyric that she says, where she says, running through the parking lot, right, at the beginning of the chorus, it reminded me of this one incident that I had completely forgotten about. So it was nighttime, right? And as usual, I was walking home from my grandmother's. And so the walk isn't like a super crazy walk. It's a little over a mile, so it would normally take me like about a half an hour, 35 minutes maybe, to walk all the way home. And part of my route is walking across this very dark, very open, large, empty parking lot that was a church parking lot for the church that I used to attend, which I don't know if I've said this before. I was raised very Catholic. That's a whole other story. So I'm crossing through this parking lot, right? So there's no lights. No lights. There's lights on the actual street, but not the parking lot at all. And like I said, it's a big, large, vacant parking lot with a big church building in it. No lights, nothing at all around me. And, all of the stores that are normally open are closed because it's nighttime, right? And everyone's already in their homes. They're probably in bed. And, here I am just listening to my music in my headphones, walking home alone through this parking lot. And all of a sudden, this SUV, this van, I don't know if, aren't SUV and van interchangeable? I don't know. Anyway, this big van pulls up from behind me. So like pretend I'm like walking towards the camera, right? Have my headphones on, I'm not listening. I'm in the middle of this lot. Car pulls up from behind me and parks sideways, like horizontally in front of me. And I didn't even know the car was approaching me until it was already too late and it was already parked because they had turned their headlights off. And because I had my headphones in, I couldn't hear it. So I didn't see it because I didn't see any lights coming from behind me from the headlights, and I didn't hear it because I had my headphones in. Many mistakes made. Why are you walking home alone? Bleh. Many mistakes made. Why are you walking home alone at night? Blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, I get it. Anyways. So the car parks in front of me. Like I said, it's a big like SUV or a van or whatever they're called. And before I can even register like what's happening right now, like I was like so confused. The car parks and a man gets out of the driver's side car and walks up and approaches me. Okay. So obviously at this point, I take my headphones out. I'm like, what's going on? This man, he walks right up to me. Mind you, the car is in front of him. Okay, so he walks up to me and starts asking me, my name and how old I am and telling me how pretty I am. And, the fact that I was an underage girl didn't, scare him off at all, unfortunately. And he starts trying to convince me to get in his car, right? So, thinking about this situation strategically, he's not threatening me. He's not holding a weapon to me or anything, right? But he didn't really have to, because unlike every experience I had before then, this man physically got out of his parked car and walked up to me. So there's no one around me. It's just me and this guy and his van and this empty, dark, vacant parking lot. So like who am I gonna yell to for help? Right? I could try and run. I could, but I have two barriers in front of me. Obviously, the guy who is standing directly in front of me, but then also beyond the guy, just a few more feet, is the large van that is parked sideways like this, okay? On the other hand, aside from those two obstacles, the actual church building, because remember, it's a church parking lot, is blocking one entire side of me. So even if I try to run, there's very few options. I have one shot where I can try to run to the right of me and, run around the car. But the man is within arm's reach of me. Like he's literally right in front of me talking to me. So he's within arm's reach of me. So it's not, strategically speaking, it's not looking too good for me. It's not, okay? So I freeze. You always think, I feel like everyone kind of thinks they know what they're going to do in that situation. Like, exactly how you're going to react, right? And I was a kid who I watched a ton of Law and Order growing up. So I always thought, oh yeah, I'm going to know exactly what to do in that situation. That would never happen to me, right? But until you're actually in that situation, you don't know how you're going to react. You just don't. You actually don't know how you're going to react. So I freeze. And I keep denying this man's advances, right? I keep telling him, no, I don't want to get in your car. I keep apologizing. I keep trying to be as nice as possible, right? Because that's the best thing to do in this situation. Just be nice, be gentle, appease, placate, do what you need to do to get out of the situation safely. So, but I just keep reiterating, like, as much as I can, like, no, I don't want to get in your car. And so, like, unfortunately, this was not like a quick interaction, right? This actually took a few solid minutes of us just standing there and me trying to say anything I could to get out of the situation safely. In a few minutes doesn't seem like a lot of time. But in that kind of situation, every second feels like a minute, every minute feels like an hour. It's very scary. And time moves very, very slowly. And the whole time I'm just in full fight or flight mode, even though I'm actually kind of frozen, like internally I'm like fight or flight. And I'm just thinking, like the whole time, right? I'm just thinking to myself, like, oh, like, you're so fucking stupid. Like this is exactly why they tell girls not to walk home alone at night. And why did you think it wouldn't happen to you? And this guy is probably, gonna kidnap you and cut you up and they're gonna find your body parts somewhere. Like that's all the thoughts that are going through my head while also simultaneously trying to be like, oh my God, how do I get out of this situation? So minutes go by, just him and I having this back and forth. He's still standing right in front of me, everything. And for whatever reason, I cannot for the life of me remember what I said to this guy. I think, like, honestly, I think I was just so, like, paralyzed in fear that my brain just, like, forgot or something. I don't know. But, like, whatever I said, it actually convinced this man to get in his car and drive away. To this day, I not only can't believe that happened, but I genuinely can't believe I actually got out of that situation safely. And I so wish I could remember what I said to this guy to make him get back in the car. Because it had to be something like crazy. It really did. Because he really had the upper hand in every single way in that situation. So I must have said some shit that genuinely, like, scared him. Because he would not accept no for an answer for several minutes. So I don't know what I said, but it must have been something damn convincing, okay? So no, I've never actually been thankfully. But that was one situation that resurfaced when I was going through the source material and researching that really made me relate to this song. Now, on the other hand, as far as like, the not the like the kidnapping and stalking, but like the drugging and everything else that takes place, I can relate to that as well through a different experience, and I'm not going to elaborate on that. But what I will say, it's usually not the big bad wolf or stranger danger. It's usually someone you know and someone you trust. So Danielle put it really well in her Melanie video, and she shared her experience saying for her it was a hunting trip that she went on with her stepfather, and she's been very open about her experiences, and like I said, I strongly recommend you guys all watch this video. But yeah, I say all this to say that I'm not coming at this as just like a hater who's hating on all of the music and everything and saying it's all bad because of X, Y, and Z. I'm really not. Because honestly, as someone who can relate to a lot of the themes in Crybaby, there are certain things that I really do appreciate, and then there are certain things that I really don't. Something I really appreciate about Tag Your It is the sound. Something about Melanie, and I don't know if I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it now anyway. Melanie is really, really, really good at creating atmosphere in her music. Very good. And the sound by itself in this song gives me that exact same sense of dread and suspense I felt in that moment with the guy in the van. It's very ominous. And in that way, it really relates to my personal experience. I mean, it has to be really good, right? Because it resurfaced some of those old memories that I had, pushed out of my mind at some point. I get that very like stomach sinking fight or flight reaction when I hear the music by itself, and especially at the very end of Tag Your It in the song, when the music changes to that sort of like, the only way I can describe it is like that game over music when she's like put in the van, that game over sound. That's like literally exactly how I felt in that moment. It's like game over, you're gonna die. This is it, you're cooked. So in that way, I actually really appreciate this song. I do. I really do. However, now aside from the sound, the actual content within the lyrics in the video, I can't relate to that at all, because it feels more like a fantasy and less like a realistic and traumatic experience. Because the sound is very much that like, oh fuck, like gut reaction I get in my body from that experience, right? But then the lyrics in the video are very like, come and get me. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's the part where my body goes, no, 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 no. Like that's the part that's not registering with me. And these videos and these lyrics, they don't feel like it's being done and presented through the lens of the victim. It feels like it's done and presented through the lens of the predator. And like I said, when it comes to, the drinking in the essay especially, it's usually not stranger danger. Not that those experiences don't happen and aren't valid. Of course they are. They do happen. They are valid for sure. But like Danielle said too, right? It's usually not the big bad wolf. It's usually more like the wolf in sheep's clothing. So I think if the goal is really to bring awareness to these issues, which Melanie has said is the goal, then she would take more care in how she portrays and presents these themes in a way that is more realistic and less glamorized and suggestive. Like I said, it's usually the wolf in sheep's clothing. So if she really wanted to keep that like fantasy element to the story while still bringing awareness to these issues, maybe instead, the wolf, the big bad wolf could actually, be someone in a sheep's mask, right? The wolf in sheep's clothing, someone who Crybaby trusts, who is then revealed later on to be a big bad wolf who takes advantage of her. that would not only keep the fantasy storytelling element that Melanie really enjoys, but also actually bring awareness. Which is why I really don't think that awareness was the actual goal here. But then there are things like Mad Hatter, for instance. I actually really appreciate this song for a couple of reasons. Number one, I like the way that it shows the effects of trauma on the mind. So Crybaby goes, literally insane after being traumatized and ends up repeating cycles of substance use when she starts smoking and drinking like her mom. That is unfortunately incredibly common for survivors to repeat toxic cycles and fall into substance use as a means of coping with the trauma. Now, I don't know if that was really Melanie's goal. I think it's more likely that Melanie just thought if Crybaby went crazy after everything, it would make the story more interesting. I honestly think that was the true mindset there. But even so, that actually is somewhat realistic in terms of the effects of trauma on a person or a child. But then there are songs like Alphabet Boy and Training Wheels and Pacify Her, which genuinely make me sick to my stomach and I don't feel like bring any awareness at all and only serve to blend children and adult themes. And Alphabet Boy specifically just makes me extremely unsettled. The way she sounds out letters like a baby and the nursery rhyme music, singing about not being a little kid anymore and, you're not my daddy, I'm not your dolly, that song genuinely makes me nauseous. It does. It really does. So again, I say all this to demonstrate that I'm not just being a hater for the sake of being a Melanie hater. I'm not. There are genuinely things I can appreciate about this music as a person who relates. And then there are other things that I can't appreciate at all and disturb me to my core so much. So when Melanie says things like, these are fun topics to explore, that doesn't seem like awareness to me at all. At all. That screams fantasy to me. So much of this subject matter makes far more sense with adults. So the fact that it is a baby that Melanie is playing the character of, who is being drugged and exploring adult activities and being kidnapped and SA'd, seems just so gratuitous and feels a whole lot like an adult living out a fantasy through a made-up character. And it doesn't help that many times throughout these videos, we can see Melanie cosplaying as a baby, wearing diapers and pacifiers and bibs, playing with baby toys, eating baby food, drinking from baby bottles, sitting in high chairs and laying in cribs, which Melanie fans scramble, work overtime to find reasons why this is not age when it so obviously is. Even some of Melanie's costumes in her music videos and stage performances, like the blue dress and Pacify Her, was backtraced to a website specifically for these particular fetishes. Age play, baby diaper lover, all of that stuff. Which is this is a stupid point, but that is another bizarre thing to me, because you can literally just buy regular girly baby doll dresses for adults. Just regular ones from regular stores. There's nothing particularly unique about this dress, and I can find very similar ones to it from regular sites that sell regular clothes. So the fact that it's from this specific site is so revealing. She's dressing as a baby, her character is a baby, who is having sex, but no, it's not age. How does that make any sense at all? Now, the next argument to explain all of this is that it's just the aesthetic. Melanie did state in an interview discussing Crybaby that she really enjoys the aesthetic of childhood, more specifically vintage childhood themes and toys. She said she likes to collect vintage toys, she loves pastels, and a lot of vintage baby doll clothing. Which, in all fairness, the vintage childhood aesthetic is a visually pleasing aesthetic. It has a sense of warmth and comfort and hominess to it. So I do get that. I get the appeal. But hear me out. You can have that aesthetic without depicting actual children in these scenarios. Now, maybe not necessarily like the cribs and the diapers and stuff like that, but you can still have visual themes of vintage items, clothing, furniture, knickknacks, antiques, pastels, without making it about actual children and children's themes. Even in the video for Carousel, that takes place in a carnival setting. Carnivals have that pastel, vintage, timeless feel, carousel horses, and pastel pink cotton candy. And while, yes, carnival themes and amusement park themes are often associated with childhood and children, many adults enjoy these things as well, very much so. I literally just went to a theme park with my brothers and my family the other day, and I rode the rides and I had a ton of fun, and I'm a grown-ass woman. Like, if it's well thought out, you can definitely have these unique aesthetics and still make the actual story about adults. And again, Melanie is very much capable of this. She is very well thought out, especially in K-12, where I'll demonstrate that she really is very smart and very artistic. You really see how truly creative and imaginative her mind is in K-12. Even paying attention to all the little details. This is an artist who makes every single artistic choice with careful thought and intention. The aspect of the characters as children was not at all necessary, and it just feels so out of place. And look, I know what Melanie fans will say to all of that, like they always say. It's art. It's not supposed to make sense. It's subjective. You just don't get it. That one's their favorite. That's their favorite. You just don't get it. Listen, if that's how you want to see it, I can't really change that. At the end of the day, you can say that about all art. If that's what you have to tell yourself in order to convince yourself that it's not what it so very clearly is, then live in denial, I guess. You know, I just can't bring myself to understand why the character needs to be about actual children, when if you just use a little bit more thought, you can still keep most of these elements like the pastel vintage aesthetic and the dark themes and use adult characters. And the only reason I can think of why she would deliberately choose to do that is because it's gratifying for her in some way. Especially because she's playing Crybaby, and that's really the dead giveaway to me. If it wasn't gratifying for her in some way, and it was truly about a deeply disturbing story of a tortured child for the sake of the story, she wouldn't be so hellbent on playing the character and identifying with the character. She's living out these experiences she's never had through a fictional character she created. She's living out a fantasy. It's not venting or therapeutic. People say sometimes survivors will create consensual scenarios to relive those experiences in a controlled way as a means of therapy. But you can't make that argument here because Melanie has not experienced that trauma. There's nothing for her to vent or cope with. She just likes it. She just likes it. I'm sorry, but it's true. And look, I just want to say quickly, in case there are some of you in my audience who may have mixed feelings towards this, I'm not trying to shame anyone for certain fantasies they may have that have nothing to do with children, but that involve some of these themes we are talking about. I realize that while kind of bizarre, there are people who have fantasies about things like being stalked or drugged or kidnapped, etc. That isn't really the main issue here. The issue isn't that Melanie may have a fantasy about being stalked or kidnapped. The issue is that she's involving children in these fantasies. Now, don't get me wrong. The idea that there are people like Melanie who may have those fantasies is certainly highly offensive to those of us who have actually had those experiences, but that is an entirely different conversation than having those fantasies but with children. That's what I need everyone to understand. Now, as far as the age and the LG, look, personally, I do judge that. I do. I'm not going to lie about it, okay? As someone with that kind of trauma, I cannot understand why any traumatized person would willingly reenact their childhood trauma and get off to that. A lot of people will probably perceive that as judgmental and lacking nuance. To be honest, I understand the nuance, and the nuance changes nothing for me. I actually don't think reenacting your childhood sexual abuse is a good coping mechanism for healing. I'm sorry, I don't. I just don't. If you are a person who gets aroused by pretending to be an child or reenacting an abusive dynamic, even if you're a victim, I really think you need to reflect and examine why that is. And look, I'm not saying that every single person who does this is a predator, though I'd argue that a good amount are. I've read a lot of comments and stories of people who used to engage in those things who were once victims, who have now reflected and gone to therapy and have realized how toxic and damaging that is. So if you are someone on the other end of this video who does enjoy those things, I'm not calling you a predator. I don't know who you are and I don't know what you're attracted to. But I do think maybe you should really sit with yourself and ask yourself why. Why do you enjoy this? Do you like children? Are you just traumatized trying to take back control? Is it something else entirely? Just reflect and ask yourself these questions. To be honest, I really don't think the majority of Melanie's fans are predators. I really don't. I think the vast majority of them are young girls, young boys, and adults who listened to her as a kid. But I absolutely think a decent-sized demographic of her fans are predators with this exact fantasy. And I think Melanie knows this, and I don't think she cares, because I think she shares in that fantasy. And a big reason why I feel this way is because of the highly controversial Crybaby coloring book, which we will explore now. So this coloring book had gone viral on TikTok back in January of this year following the resurfaced allegations against Melanie, which will have to be its own separate video like with K-12 because there's a lot to unpack there and I have many thoughts. But the book actually came out 10 years prior in 2016 following the Crybaby album. Each page of the coloring book correlates with a song off of the album. Not all of these images are controversial, so the dollhouse one and the carousel one I'd say are probably the least controversial, and I'll show just these two to give you an idea of both what the Crybaby character looks like in this book and what the art style is. But a decent amount of them are pretty weird. 3 of them in particular have been accused of being CSAM. I'm not going to show any of these images, and you can find them all quite easily. So the most controversial one is the page for soap. In the image, we see Crybaby in a bathtub. She has a bar of soap. She's holding a bar of soap in her mouth with both hands. She's crying while making a very suggestive facial expression, and her knees and toes are poking out of the water. And the next really controversial one is the page for Tag You're It. In this one, the big bad wolf is holding Crybaby in one arm, and she looks like she is struggling beneath his grasp. And in the other hand, he's holding an ice cream cone placed directly above her behind, like almost touching it with the tip and the end of the ice cream cone. And the third one is the page for Cake, which is one of 4 songs that initially released as an EP but were later added to the deluxe edition of Crybaby, and I'll discuss those soon. They aren't part of the main story, which is why I didn't mention them before. And in that one, Crybaby is literally a piece of cake on a plate being consumed. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. So there's quite a bit of discourse on whether or not these images qualify as CSAM. I am not an expert on this, so I'm actually going to play a few TikToks of other people who are qualified to speak on this and hear their insight as to why they believe this material is CSAM. But first, I just want to give more context on what CSAM is. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, CSAM is any visual depiction of explicit conduct involving a person less than 18 years old. It's important to remember CSAM consists of much more than just images and video files. While CSAM is seen and transmitted on computers and through other technology, these images and videos depict actual crimes being committed against people under the age of 18.
It has not been unknown to me that Melanie Martinez is a creep. The Crybaby coloring book by Melanie Martinez is literally depictions of child material, and nobody is going to tell me otherwise. Over the weekend, I listened to some videos and heard different people's ideas and perspectives about this coloring book. I'm going to tag some of those creators who made really good videos down below. Definitely give them a watch, repost them, get this out there. This should not be promoted to anyone. And of course, her fan base is just as toxic, just as problematic, and they victim blame and enable predatory behavior. All of her supporters make endless excuse and reasons behind why this coloring book is appropriate. One of the excuses that gets me the most is that this coloring book isn't even marketed for kids. It's marketed for adults, so what's the big deal? Do you guys think that kids are into child material? Adults are into it. This coloring book shouldn't exist at all, but it being marketed towards adults doesn't make it any better at all. It honestly makes it worse. And then, of course, we have the classic one that everybody likes to say, you're pointing out creepiness? That makes you the creep. No. Pointing out something that is highly inappropriate and predatory behavior does not make us a predator. It makes us actually want to prevent children from being harmed. One of the creators that posted a video about this specifically without mentioning the coloring book talks a lot about how images are portrayed and that a child in the bathtub is just that. But when you stick soap in its mouth and you put a certain expression, you know what you're doing. When you are an artist, you know what you are portraying. There's some inspiration from somewhere and you are drawing. It doesn't just turn out that way. It doesn't just turn into the child inappropriately posing in a tub with soap in its mouth. That doesn't just happen. You created it. You knew what you were doing and what you were trying to portray. I'm going to give an example of this. We can see here in the Where Hands Go book by Crystalline Diggs that you can easily portray children in a bath without making it creepy, without making it child abuse material. Artists know what they are doing. I don't even feel comfortable sharing any of the images from the actual coloring book on my platform because that's how serious child material really is to me. I don't think that we should be promoting it or putting it out there for anyone to see, whether it's an illustration or an actual photograph. So I will not be posting any of the coloring pages that I am referring to in this video, but I do encourage you to go and find them and look at them, and other creators that I have tagged below have shared those images, so definitely go take a look at them for yourself because it is definitely child material.
Melanie Martinez just released her coloring book, and this book is literally CSAM, which means child essay material. There's about 3 pages in that book that are extremely disturbing and made my skin crawl. I know the fans who follow her blindly are going to defend her and try to interpret this book as art. But as a former Child Protective Services investigator who has worked countless cases where perpetrators had possession of CSAM, this book is CSAM, and it was made with in mind. And my thing is, you are a famous artist with a mass following. You could have made this book about anything. I'm tired of seeing children be... This shouldn't be a thing, and Amazon shouldn't even allow this thing to be sold on their platform. That's a whole nother conversation though. I will end with this statement. Based on my observation of this book, this is promoting and it is also trying to normalize it. When you support shit like this, you are subconsciously normalizing the overs of children. As a mother, I'm here to tell you, this is not okay. I don't care how much y'all love this artist and her extremely concerning artwork, because now they try to mask everything under art and expression. Also, the fact that the Amazon listing says parental advisory advise explicit content. Explicit content and children are 2 things that should never mix, ever. Especially since we have such a huge problem in this country. You guys don't understand the magnitude and the extent of and how disturbingly common child essay cases are becoming. It is rampant. The fact that grown men and women can look at a child or a picture of a child or a video of a child or look at a child in their surrounding and get it's disturbing. It is happening. Protect children. Protect all children. And let's not normalize this trash.
Let's talk about Melanie Martinez. I saw Melanie on The Voice. Something about her energy reminded me of my mother, and I brushed it off. I thought, well, that's, maybe it's just because there's similarities in their features. I'm talking teenage, young, youthful mother, Melanie Martinez. There's a similar vibe there in how they look, but there's a similar vibe there, period. When I saw Melanie on The Voice, I thought, I should think that this person is interesting or quirky or unique, or like the doll sort of aspect of it I should find endearing or interesting, and I did not. I was not interested. I very much had the vibe of like, no. And then years ago, there was information that came out, Melanie, an essay, and I just was like, well, okay, obviously hear the trending sounds, and I know about this coloring book. Exactly what I'm talking about when I say that these people hide in plain sight. This is exactly it. It's not okay. It's inappropriate. It is an aesthetic that is specifically, I mean, to make yourself into that the aesthetic and everything about this. Okay, I just keep starting sentences and stopping them because this is hard to talk about for me. I think there are ways that people connect to their childlike selves that are healing and wonderful and appropriate. And then there are people that use that idea to hide in plain sight. I have always felt that that is what Melanie was doing. And this coloring book is 100% not okay. There's no part of it. The depictions are not okay. Pushing the boundaries in this way and playing this like, oh, it's like, I've seen the defenders of it, like, and that it's, you know, it's the fact that it's a coloring book, the fact that the things that it's so pointed. Well, I'll just say this. My mother would have loved this coloring book. She would have taken the colored pencils and markers that she bought for me for my birthday and went to town on it. Who is the audience for this kind of material? When this kind of stuff is normalized and where people are like, oh, you're being too sensitive. Yeah, it's drawings. It's depicting something so... There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not okay.
So, Melanie fans often use the defense that the images are not explicit and therefore do not qualify as CSAM because there's no nudity or adult acts being depicted, and because it's not a real child, therefore it isn't CSAM. And technically, legally, this is true, but I really think we need to consider the perspectives of experts and social workers and their input on this. Because just because the material may not be explicit in nature doesn't mean predators aren't utilizing them. And I mean, I'm sure fans will argue that, well, you could say that about anything. Any image of a child could be utilized by a predator. And I mean, sure, it could be, yeah. But let's ask ourselves, who is this book actually for? The book is intended for adults. And Mel fans will say this as if it makes it better. Well, the book's not even for children, it's for adults. That actually makes it a lot worse, and that begs even more questions. Why do adults want to color in images of children with bars of soap in their mouths, crying in a bathtub? Why do adults want to color in images of a child as a piece of cake, or a child being kidnapped? Do you think maybe these are fair questions? And the next defense that I see, well, the pages just correlate with the songs on the album. Are you sure you're an actual Melanie Martinez fan? Because if you were, then you know that Crybaby never sat like that in the bathtub with the bar of soap in her mouth in the music video, in either of them, or in Tag You're It. That's not what happened to Crybaby. Crybaby was drunk. She ate the ice cream and fell and passed out. She wasn't awake and struggling with the ice cream cone right above her bottom. Artists know what they're doing. As an artist myself, I would never draw a child in a bathtub in that way. Not even because I'm seeing it as something suggestive or, but because it anatomically does not make any sense at all. It is an unnatural, uncomfortable position that is unrealistic and is only drawn that way for aesthetic purposes. If you actually critically examine this position, the only way this makes sense is if Crybaby's legs are literally broken. Her calf bones would have to be broken in order for the knees and feet to poke up this way. That, or her feet are broken and they're bent upwards. An experienced professional artist would know this. So again, I must ask, who is this for? Why would it be drawn this way? And why are so many people, including advocates and social workers, calling this out if it's really just that innocent? And I saw so many Melanie fans saying, well, I just don't see it. They're saying it's suggestive, but I just don't see it. Yeah, I would hope so. Duh. Duh, obviously. Why would you recognize it if you're not a predator or someone who understands predators? That's the entire point. It's disguised as innocent, and unless you are a predator or someone who understands how predators' minds work, you won't see it for what it is. You'll just see it as a Crybaby themed coloring book. It's plausible deniability. It's not supposed to be obvious. Why would it be? And look, if you are a Melanie fan who bought this book in 2016 and did not recognize it for what it was, I'm not coming for you here or trying to say you're a bad person. I'm trying to get you to take off the Melanie Martinez rose-colored glasses and look at all of this through a more critical and objective lens. Because once you do that, it paints a much more nefarious picture. Okay, so another thing, and this is something that I'm going to discuss more heavily in my K-12 videos, since that's where we really see Melanie's more like visually artistic side. But I wanted to mention this briefly on the subject of this coloring book. So Melanie has talked about in interviews some of her inspirations as far as her art, right? She's really inspired by pop surrealism, which is quite obvious if you're familiar at all with pop surrealism, and she's inspired by two artists specifically. So the first one is Mark Ryden, and you can see very clearly that she's taken quite a bit of inspiration from him. And most of his work is fine, not explicit or suggestive. I mean, I'll admit there are a couple of his paintings that I'm like, but for the most part, fine, right? Then there's this other artist named Nicoletta, insert last name here because no way in hell will I be able to pronounce that correctly, so I'm not even gonna try. But when I looked into her work, it's all making sense now. It's all making sense now. It's like that light switch. Now I get it, right? Immediately. I can't show these images. To be honest, I don't think these images should exist. I don't. I really don't. So in Danielle's video, she mentioned two of Nicoletta's paintings that Melanie said she was inspired by specifically. One involves a girl sitting with a toy train going towards her inner legs, right? And then the other one is a painting of Alice from Alice in Wonderland with a similar position with a white rabbit jumping between her legs. Those are the two that she mentioned. There's a lot more than that. A lot more. It's paintings of children, not explicit, but in very suggestive positions. Like this, it should not exist. It shouldn't. Even when I read just the Wikipedia page for this artist, right? Immediately it says this. Nicoletta was born in and lives in the Republic of San Marino and studied animation at the Institute of Art of Urbinino in Italy. She started working as an illustrator in 1995 and has illustrated many books, including Cinderella and The Girl in the Tower, written by Lisa Schroeder. I don't know. Her work has been exhibited and sold internationally with many high-profile clients such as Vogue and United Airlines. Nicoletta was awarded the Anderson Prize, honoring her as the best children's book illustrator in Italy in 2001. Other prizes are Society of Illustrators of New York and 4 prizes for excellence in the communication arts. In 2008, she worked as the character designer for a 3D animated French film, not even gonna try, under the direction of whatever. Nicoletta has participated in 11 group exhibitions and has had 9 solo exhibitions of her work. Critical reception of the Nicoletta Tarot deck has highlighted concerns over its visual aesthetic, which combines childlike figures with suggestive erotic symbolism. Some critics and viewers argue that the imagery crosses ethical boundaries by stylizing and commodifying the sexualization of innocence under the guise of surreal art. The deck has been accused of exploiting controversial visual tropes to drive commercial interest and provoke reaction. And yeah, that's kind of exactly how I feel about this material. It doesn't have to be explicit in nature in order to convey those suggestive messages. If you want to research this yourself, I would say do so with caution, especially if you're particularly sensitive. It's going to really unsettle you. And honestly, the more I researched this Melanie rabbit hole, the more deeply disturbed and unsettled I become, genuinely. My point to say all this is a lot of people criticizing this coloring book are saying things like, how could Melanie approve this? How could she approve this? How could she not see anything wrong with these artists' drawings once she looked at them and approved them? How could she approve this and not see an issue with it? Let me be very clear. Based on all of my research, including my research of Melanie's artistic inspirations, I don't think Melanie just approved this material. I believe these images came straight out of her brain and she commissioned someone to bring these images to life. And I'll demonstrate that a bit more in K-12, since there are certain scenes in K-12 that are direct interpretations of very specific paintings from these artists. But yeah, no, in my opinion, based on what I have researched, which is a lot at this point, these images came straight from her brain. I promise you they came straight from her brain. These didn't just happen to come across her desk and be like, oh yeah, sure, these are cool. No, I think she had images in mind, and I think she commissioned someone and said, hey, this is what I want. This is what I want you to depict. That is my personal opinion based on my research. Do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. Do your own research, but do it with caution. But when you do it, that light switch will flip. It will. Trust me, it will. Let's quickly touch on the Crybaby's Extra Clutter EP. So this EP has 4 songs: Playdate, Teddy Bear, Cake, and Gingerbread Man. And these songs still revolve around our main character, Crybaby, but they are not part of the main story. Teddy Bear is a song about one of Crybaby's teddy bears trying to kill her. But from what I've read, it can alternatively be interpreted as an abusive relationship that takes a dark turn. And considering the context of the Crybaby album, which this song was later added to, I think that's probably what this song actually represents. And Cake, the entire song is a metaphor for standing up to a toxic relationship fueled by lust and lacking love. And at this point, I'm just becoming redundant. Again, why are we creating imaginary scenarios about children engaging in adult activities and being in abusive relationships? Why? Why are we doing this? This makes no fucking sense. I think Melanie knows that while the majority of her fans are teens and young children, there is also a demographic of predators. And because of that, her fan base serves as a hunting ground for predators to prey upon children. And while she obviously has not explicitly stated she knows there are predators in her audience, she does know that she has an adult audience who, in her words, understand more of the lyrics than the kids do. So I'm just going to read this quote from Melanie from another deep dive by a YouTuber named Danielle, the video I mentioned. What does your average fan look like? There's so many 13 to 18-year-old girls, but there are also a lot of older people who come with their children who also relate to the music, but in a way that's not, I don't know how to explain it. There will be 8-year-olds who come to the show, and I feel like they're super into it because of the aesthetic and the colors and the story and the visuals. And their parents are there, and their parents might understand more of the lyrics than the kids do. So the parents can understand the more adult content behind it. That's what they're also interested in as well. The parents can understand the more adult content behind it. Listen, y'all can argue tirelessly about whether or not Melanie knows what she's doing, but personally, if she knows adults can understand and enjoy the adult themes, then I think she knows that predators enjoy it as well. She'd have to be remarkably naive to not recognize that. And again, this is an intelligent artist. Fans love to go back and forth with this, right? Because on the one hand, when people question the themes and the story, fans will say, you just don't get it. You don't get her. She's a genius and an artist, and you're just not a deep enough thinker to understand the meaning and the message. But then, when you question things like who she's making this content for and point out that she's smart enough to recognize it, then fans will 180. They'll 180 and they'll be like, no, she's so innocent. She's just an innocent girl. She doesn't know better. She doesn't know who's consuming her content. She can't be a naive little girl but also a creative genius, guys. Like, you do get that, right? Those things, they can't coexist. So either she's a creative genius who makes every artistic choice with careful intent, or she's a naive little girl who just likes the baby aesthetic and doesn't know any better. You can't switch back and forth between the two whenever it's convenient for you as a defense. It's one or the other. And I'm leaning towards the artist who knows what she's doing and who she's doing it for. That's what all the evidence is telling me. At this point, I don't really think there's much more I can say here about this album and my thoughts on it, so I'm just gonna leave with this. To all the Melanie Martinez fans out there, more specifically the ruthless defenders of hers, you can like the music and also acknowledge the many problematic elements both to the story and to Melanie Martinez as a person. Like, honestly, can we just be real? I am so fucking sick of this culture that, like, forces people to either abandon all art because a bad person made it, or ruthlessly defend the artist because you like the art, so therefore you have to support the artist as well. There is actually a third option. You can just say, "Hey, I like her music and I find it catchy, but I don't resonate with the story and I don't support Melanie as a person." Or you can say, "Some of these songs and the themes resonate with me because I've experienced these things, but I think Melanie had bad intentions with this art and I don't support her as a person even if I resonate with her art." It truly is that simple. It genuinely is just that simple. You know what I won't say? You know what I definitely won't say? "Oh, well, those allegations haven't been proven, and you just don't understand the artist or understand the art, and actually, you're the predator, and you're the creep for thinking that the artist is weird and problematic." You can literally just say, "Yeah, I like her art, but I don't support her as a person." Literally just say that. Just say that and move on. Just say that and move on. Because the thing about, like, Melanie's music, like, on the surface, if you don't know anything about the story or watch any of the music videos and you just listen to the music, there really isn't. I mean, there are certain songs that you can kind of, like, I'd say Alphabet Boy, you can probably get a sense that it's talking more about children, right? But a lot of the other songs, like Soap and, pretty much all of the other songs, you're not gonna immediately go there. You're just gonna think it's a catchy song. So, like, I can understand. I'm sure most of her fans are probably just listening to her music as it comes up I mean, I don't know if she's on the radio, but like on Spotify and things like that, right? Like, I understand that. And especially if you are, because I have read a lot of things and watched a lot of videos of fans talking about how her music resonates with them because they've actually gone through the things that she talks about in her songs. I've gone through a lot of the things she talks about in her songs. Like, if you listen to her as a kid and you just really like her, like, okay. And look, there are going to be people that are going to criticize you for saying you support a predator by listening to her music. But again, you don't have to give a fuck. You really don't. Like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. But oh my God, can you guys just stop being absolutely evil, please? And defending stuff that is clearly indefensible? I don't know if that's a word. But this is not stuff that should be defended. This is stuff that should very much be criticized, okay? Just say you like the art, but you don't support the artist. It's okay. I'm telling you. The yapping ginger on YouTube is telling you it's okay. It's okay. Stop ruthlessly defending her. One, because she doesn't know you or honestly care about you despite pretending that she does. But two, and more importantly, you attempting to defend this behavior just because you admire her art makes you complicit as well. It makes you look a bit predatory. It begs the question, what are your intentions? Why do you feel the need to defend this so strongly? Are you a creep? Or are you just blinded by your admiration? Figure it out. Figure it out. Because, listen, You can't defend this shit. You really can't. You can't. You just can't. You just can't. I think I'm gonna end this here. I've said pretty much everything I can think of, so I will be releasing part 2 of this deep dive next, which will, like I said, just be just like this one, where we explore Melanie's next studio album and film, K-12. And FYI, if you thought this was bad, you just wait for K-12. If you're still skeptical for some reason, I think the K-12 analysis will really solidify that Melanie Martinez is a deeply flawed individual with a very dark inner world. And depending on how well these 2 videos do view-wise, I may then follow up with an analysis of portals and even a breakdown of the actual allegations against Melanie, because there are a lot of them, sadly. I obviously don't want to make 4 whole videos on the same person if people don't want to watch it. But I can guarantee you that regardless of how this video does, I will still be covering K-12 in my next video. So don't worry, this isn't going to be like the Onision deep dive that I said I would continue and never did. Which I will eventually do as well, perhaps in a couple months. But yeah, so definitely let me know your thoughts on this. I know this is different from my usual content. Hopefully I did it justice. And I would especially like to hear from Melanie fans or former Melanie fans, right? If you're someone who really liked her music and you still really like her music, and you don't support her, or you do support her, I just want to hear what you guys have to say. I want to know, especially to like some of the people that grew up with her and really liked her, and then as they got older and the allegations and they looked at this more critically, like what's your thought process? Did you just not put it together back then? Did you not look at it so literally? Did you just listen to the music and you didn't know the story? Did you, I mean, in all fairness, like even the music videos, like, you know, if you don't know that there's a lot. Like I really want to know like when it clicked for you and it was like oh crap, like this is like dark, you know, like if you are of that perspective, or you know, even if you are still a Melanie supporter, but I want to hear opinions from all sides. Okay? Melanie defenders, please be respectful. And again, please, I'm begging you, don't dox me, okay? But yeah, that's all I got. So, anyways, with that, I hope you all have a lovely day or night, depending on where you are. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.